Hi, welcome to Orchard Supply Hardware.
Hi, do you stock like 500 different types of shovels?
No, only the best ones.
And do you have a ginormous store that I need a GPS to get around in?
No, as you can see, our store is the perfect size.
Okay, then I'm also looking for sales associates who act all surprised when I ask for help.
Nope, our people love to help.
Wow, you sure there's a market for this?
Orchard Supply Hardware is actually fun to be around. Come see at the happiest grand opening ever, May 20th and 21st at our new Belmont store. Orchard, home, hardware, and happiness.
There's something outside.
What is that?
Good afternoon, Monster X Radio listeners. This is your host, Gunnar Monson. I am flying solo today as my good friend Shane has been out at the Olympic Project group this weekend. They had a public expedition. I should say we, as I am also a member of the OP, but I was not able to make it. I had an important track meet to go to this weekend, and for Jake, our 13-year-old, and he was running and jumping his little heart out. So we did manage to catch the new Guardians of the Galaxy movie last night, so that was fun. With us today is Mr. Jeff Byers and Jean St. John of Creatureplica. We're gonna be talking with them shortly. I did want to take a second to give a shout out to our Monster X listener and my good buddy Paul Costco. Paul, there's your shout out, my friend, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Talk first with J.C. Mercer from here in Oregon. J.C. is putting on a new festival this year in Oregon, August 19th out in Troutdale. I know that Cliff Barrickman's going to be there. JC, are you there?
I am. How you doing, Gunnar?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good, buddy. So tell us a little bit what you got planned for the first annual Oregon Bigfoot Festival. It is the first, correct?
Yeah. Actually, yes, this is the first one.
Right.
Yeah, Saturday, August 19th, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Glen Auto Park in Troutdale, Oregon. We'll be asking for a $5 donation for adults and $2 for kids 12 and under. We'll have food vendors. We'll have Bigfoot merchandise, carnival-style games. There's a Bigfoot photo booth. Plus, we'll also have Cliff Barrickman from Finding Bigfoot. He'll speak at our VIP conference. What else do we have? We have mini golf, and yeah, exactly. There's all kinds of really cool stuff. We're excited about it. We'll be shooting a commercial there as well. What else we have going on? You kind of name it. We're really excited about it. It's the first Bigfoot festival in Oregon. Bigfoot's been included in other festivals, but never a standalone. So we're really excited about that.
Well, tell me a little bit about this VIP conference that you've got Cliff speaking at. What's that entail?
Cliff's going to speak at 3 sessions in the Sam Cox building, which is located on the fairground, or not fairgrounds, in the park. And so people will have 3 choices to choose from. You can go to our website and choose which session you would like. Cliff will be speaking for an hour and a half. It's a meet and greet. We're only asking $35, so everybody will have a chance to go there, listen to him, meet him, get autographs, pictures, and all that.
So Cliff's going to be putting on a presentation. I've heard Cliff speak several times, and he knows the subject inside and out, and is very well spoken individual. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to Cliff Barrickman from Finding Bigfoot, which they just got done filming the last episode down in Willow Creek last weekend, and so it's. But Cliff is really well spoken, and he's a Bigfoot nerd, self-described Bigfoot nerd, and has I've seen him do a presentation on footprints. I've seen him do another presentation on like some history, and he used to, of course, be a grade school teacher, so he really knows how to put together a great presentation. Yeah, and so if you have a chance to go to, what is your website, JC?
The website is OregonBigfootFestival.weebly.com.
Okay, can you spell the Weebly part?
Sure. W-E. I know, right? It's actually a free site that we're using to keep the cost down.
Right. Sure.
So Weebly is W-E-E-B-L-Y.
All right. Weebly.com. Oregon.
Yeah.
Oregon Bigfoot Festival. Weebly.com.
Yes. Oregon Bigfoot Festival. .weebly.com. And you can also find us on Facebook. And I forgot to mention that we also have a professional story book teller named Emmy Blue and the Squatchy, and so she'll be there for the kids. Yeah, can you believe that?
So, yeah, sounds cool.
Yeah. So we have stuff for the kids. Go ahead.
And adults. No, it's all right. I'm planning on being there. Yeah, I'm. I may be coming as a vendor at Sasquatch Coffee, but I definitely, if not, either way, I'm going to be there. So I will definitely look forward to meeting you in person and enjoying the first ever Oregon Bigfoot Festival. Again, that's coming up in August the 19th out in Troutdale, Oregon. Look it up online. You can find, if you just Google Oregon Bigfoot Festival, I'm sure you can find it. So get your tickets to go meet Cliff and listen to his presentation and enjoy the festivities. JC, thanks for joining us today. We'll have you back on again here before the festival to talk a little bit more about it.
That sounds great, Gunnar. Thanks a lot for letting me be on your program.
You bet. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Now I'm going to my buddy Jeff Byers is one of the gentlemen involved in Creatureplica, and I'm going to let them tell you about we're going to talk some Bigfoot. We're going to talk about how they came to start this company, because we've also got an extremely talented sculptor and artist, and one of Jeff's partners, Gene, with us too. So let's bring them on and get started with Monster Radio. Monster X Radio, I guess it's called, yeah. But it's actually Creatureplica Day at Monster X Radio. Gentlemen, are you there?
Yeah. Hey, Gunner.
So I know I've got Jeff and is it Gene? How do you pronounce it? Because it's, of course, French. It's Gene?
Yeah.
Okay. How are you guys today?
Pretty good.
Wonderful.
Man. How you doing?
Good. Well, Jeff, I know you just got back from doing a Bigfoot investigation. We were talking a little bit before, so why don't you let's start with you, Jeff, and tell us who you are and what it is exactly that you do.
That's a small yet massive question. My name is Jeff Byers, and along with what we do for a living or whatever, we kind of came together as a group to start this toy company. It's kind of how our love for this subject matter manifested itself, and in conversations with Gene, because Gene's kind of like I was first a little bit starstruck when I was talking to Gene, because he is, I use the word famous, but he is one of arguably the best sculptors, right now. And as far as toys and, and action figures, he's the man. And we had chatted about doing, a line of cryptid type stuff. And in the course of that, I learned that, he had this incredible knowledge of the subject matter and this love of it. And it just fit perfectly. We didn't have to make it happen. It just kind of happened on its own, if that makes sense. And that was, we started this conversation 5 years ago, is when the beginning conversation started. So it took a couple of years there to come to fruition. Last year was, we actually had product, and I think up to that point right now, it's, other than go into the gory detail, it worked out great. I'm very proud of what we do, and I'm very proud to be working with somebody like Gene.
Well, you guys are. I mean, what you guys do is super cool. I mean, I collected like models and stuff as a kid, but I actually have one of the Skookum, which was an event exclusive model at the International Bigfoot Conference this last year. So, in fact, it holds a proud display area on my desk with my other Sasquatch paraphernalia. But they're really cool. Yeah, they're super cool.
Thank you. It's everything has a story behind it, and that just worked out good. We met Russ, and that one kind of happened just on its own as well. We were proud of that, and Gene already had the knowledge of that particular, the accounts and how he was going to look, and when the conference from that area happened, the first IBC, it just was a perfect fit.
And this one is actually a limited edition, and they're numbered, because I've got number 343 of 500. So that kind of makes them even more collectible. We have very few of the Skookum left. In fact, he might be retired shortly, and we actually retired the silverback one that was for the Ohio Bigfoot Conference last year. He went pretty quick. As far as that, we have several variants of stuff we're doing, and the variants go quick. You're right; they're very popular, especially when they're numbered like that. And we only do 500 of them. Right. So Gene, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in Creatureplica?
Okay. My name's Gene St. Jean. I've been making toys and action figures for, I think, about 22 or 23 years now. And I got into it in a as a side job, doing dolls and preschool toys, kind of as a hobby at first, and then it became a regular thing. And then after doing that for about 5 years, I worked at McFarlane Toys for almost 7 years, and I was the sculpting supervisor there for the last few years of my stint there. And then from there, I split from them and started working freelance, and I do stuff for Diamond Select Toys and DC Direct. And through those guys, I do a lot of Marvel and DC Comics stuff, and a lot of movie properties like Sin City and Kill Bill, and just about anything that comes down the pipe at me that I like to do. At this point, I can kind of select the projects that I want or don't want. And a few years ago, I met Jeff through a friend of mine who I used to work with, and he had told me that Jeff was looking for somebody to do a cryptid-based line primarily, Bigfoot, Yeti, and things like that. And I basically told him, I was like, well, just stop right there. Just tell the dude to call me because I'm already totally into the subject matter. And as I got into the whole Sasquatch phenomena when I was probably in 4th or 5th grade. We had these little reading magazines in the back of the classroom, and some of them, they would have different subjects to get kids interested in reading. And one of them had Dick Smith with the Planet of the Apes makeup on the cover. Another one had one of those blurry fin shots of Nessie under the water from Loch Ness. And one of them was the famous frame from the PG film. And I had never heard of that before because it was just before Sasquatch ended up being on $6 Million Man. So I knew nothing about it. And I was reading it, and I was just blown away that there was a possibility that this 8-foot ape man was living, you know, in the United States someplace, and that people had actually seen it. So that hooked me right there. So for a long time, I was interested in that, and of course I was into all sorts of monster comic books and movies. And like you're talking about, you're probably talking about like the Aurora model kits from the 70s. That's the stuff that I collected too as a kid. And then I kind of got out of it for a long time because I was into music. So I played in bands for years and years. And then when I was like 28 or 29 is when I got into sculpting. That's when I got my first sculpting job and all that other stuff I mentioned about McFarlane Toys, and eventually came around to talking to Jeff, and he had a real passion for the subject as I did, and we just kind of let it evolve kind of organically as far as, you know, what characters we were going to do, you know, what cryptids and how they were going to look. And eventually he brought on a couple of his other friends, Nick Epley and Craig Deere, to also be part of the backing team on the thing. And so the company is basically a 4-man team that does absolutely everything from soup to nuts, which is, you know, all the artwork, all the concept work, all of the legal and accounting work, all the logistics and shipping and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty much 4 people doing it, other than, you know, when those guys press some of their family members into service at the warehouse. But
yes.
So so getting involved in the toy company brought me, just like a few years, maybe 5 years ago or so, I got heavily back into the whole subject. And it was around the time that people were first talking about the fingerprints in, you know, the stuff with Jimmy Chilcutt and everything, you know, the ridges and stuff. And then there was the hoax with the freezer hoax with those idiots down in Georgia or whatever. And so there was a lot of hubbub around the subject, and I came across an interview with a guy named John Quasar, who wrote a book called Recasting Bigfoot. And actually his concept of how the various potential species of Bigfoot creatures around the country came to be kind of sucked me back into it, because I had never heard theories like that before. It's very biologically based. There's no, you know, like psychedelic nonsense. But so I found him on Facebook and was like, dude, you know, I read your book. I really dug it. And, you know, and after a little while, we sort of became friends on there. And that's where the Skookum head sculpt came from. It's heavily influenced by his research work in his book, because he kind of hypothesized that some of these variations on creature biology that you see, like some with more human noses, some with more of a flatter nose and things like that. His idea was that some of these could actually be apish, like ape-like versions of different monkeys, kind of like that Loisy ape that was reported in South America, in that old photograph where it's kind of propped up on the oil crate with the stick. And, you know, a lot of people looked at it as, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yep, I do.
So the consensus with a lot of scientists was that was basically a spider monkey that they cut the tail off, stuck it on a smaller box, and then the whole hoax was that it was actually just a monkey and not like a gigantic version. Because those guys had claimed that 2 of those things had attacked them, and they were like 5 feet tall, but they were tailless, so they weren't monkeys. They were more an ape-like kind of version of that. So John's theory was that some of these types of creatures, rather than coming across the land bridge, like the theory of the Gigantopithecus, potentially some sort of evolved version of that coming across with the early Native Americans. Part of his theory is that. What's that?
Oh, we got some kind of feedback there. Go ahead.
Oh, I was like all of a sudden
somebody grunted or belched or something. I'm not sure.
Somebody let the cows out.
Dang it, Jeff.
But so the idea was that some of these creatures were actually old world monkeys that traveled up from South America, and that those would be more of your skookum variety, whereas the variety that was more in the Canadian territories and the Pacific Northwest would be more of the classic kind of Gigantopithecus type, Hattie type creature. So those are some of the things that informed some of the decisions and how I kind of ended up where I am mentally with all this stuff. So,
well, Gene, I have to ask you: have you had a Bigfoot experience?
No. My interest is kind of purely intellectual at this point. I've read a lot of books on the subject, and I am one of the dreaded armchair researchers that everyone loves to hate or hates to hate. I have a lot of opinions, and
yeah, but you have a lot
of opinions, but no field experience.
And knowledge. Yeah, but that's okay. I always think it's cool to talk to people that have done a lot of research into the subject. I started out kind of, as a kid reading John Green's books and with In Search of, and I've read quite a few books as an adult. I tend to like to read stuff around the subject. I did read Grover Krantz, Bigfoot Prints, because here's a scientist that is approaching the subject.
Yeah.
And I've read Dr. Meldrum's book, but I like to read like things on biology and primatology and stuff that that would helps us maybe be a little bit more prepared in the field. But I think it's cool to read about all the history and that kind of stuff too. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think it has to be a balance, because there's so little that's actually known about these creatures that can be, like, not that you want to call everybody a liar, but you have to have a consensus of data. If you're going to say that they look this way, they have a human type nose, they have this, they have that, they have no sclera around their eyes, or they do have it, there's no consensus on any of that stuff. There's not even a consensus on the peaked skull. So, at some point you have to look at similar topics to kind of draw on, which means your best bet is to go back and study pre-human history and to study other primates, because then you have kind of a vocabulary to pick from as far as how to explain certain things. Why would they have a certain type of nose? And as I understand it, it has something to do with climate, how the moisture is stored in the nasal passages or something like that. I don't remember exactly. I think I heard Meldrum explain it at one point on a lecture thing. But, so I mean, you try to find topics that are related. I try to stay away from the stuff that's potentially an incredible waste of time. The portal stuff, the stuff with portals, the munchkins coming through the portals, and I blow all that stuff off. But, I'd like to say that you can't really discard anything, because I have a lot of strange beliefs too. My spiritual beliefs lean more into Wicca and modern witchcraft and stuff. So I'm not saying that I don't have a lot of nutty beliefs either, but I don't think the stuff pertains to this specifically. But that's my opinion. If they turn out to have, alien overlords and they're getting dropped off by UFOs and they're jumping in and out of portals like Stargate or something, God bless them. But until
that's
all
the time we have. That's all the time we have for Monster X today. Thanks for listening. I'm a very
How many
much
demographics did I just piss off there?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean I don't mind talking to people, and I have friends that claim to have had some weird stuff happen.
Yeah.
And the thing is that 99.9% of all reported interaction is very animalistic. If there's some things that just don't make sense, and it's either one or the other, or you've got two different things out there that are completely different entities. But because Bigfoot either is one or the other, it's not both. It's just like people say, I believe in Bigfoot or I don't believe in Bigfoot. I don't. It doesn't. Belief really doesn't factor into it. I think it's just the way that people stated it. It's like Bigfoot either exists or it doesn't exist. Our believing in it doesn't factor in at all. So, and it's just like people say, we need to prove they exist to protect their environment. Well, Bigfoot doesn't care if we prove they exist. But I'm sure they care if we destroy their environment. But
right.
So,
that's
so
kind of
Jeff,
where I'm at.
Jeff,
yes.
You were out this. You are actually involved with Ohio Night Stalkers. That's the right name?
Yes, sir. Ohio Night Stalkers. Mike Feltner, Mike Miller, Cody Pauley, and TJ Owens. The two Mikes. I actually met them at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. I'll go ahead. Yeah, that's a.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You were actually out. Actually, I actually walked in the door from the woods about 10 minutes before the show was starting today. I love going out and I'm always, of course, if I'm in the woods, I'm quote unquote Bigfooting. I'm hoping that to have some kind of encounter. You were out actually doing an investigation, you said. So can you tell us a little about what you were doing this weekend?
Yeah, it's kind of a. I guess I need to preface it. I get a little heat once in a while because you show up at an event and you're selling toys. So basically, you're a salesman. You're kind of taking advantage of the topic, and
I hear you.
I don't voice my opinion a lot, about it because people don't know me. People don't know what I do or what my whole life. I think 1985 I wrote my senior term paper on Bigfoot. I mean, it's been a long time, and it's a very private thing because as I get into it and I learn more, I have an infinite amount of questions because I get more confused if that makes sense. And I have been blessed by hooking up with the Ohio Night Stalkers, and I've got to go out when I mean they do investigations and they try to help people and new areas and they cover Ohio and West Virginia and Kentucky and a lot of different areas, and every time I get the chance, because it's a 6-hour drive from my house to their house before we can go, and I've been very blessed to be able to. It's been a little over a year and a half the first time I went with them. Now, I did have what I thought were experiences as I was younger. I mean, I've always, part of what I do for a living, I do dirt work. We build ponds and tear out timber and stuff like that and improve land. And I've heard some things, and you kind of leave it at that. And you're like, well, I hope. I want that to be. I want that to be. But I didn't really know. But when I met these guys and they kind of, took a trusting, they're like, we trust you. I got to go on some very intense, I call them expeditions, to meet with people and go to areas where current stuff is happening, and it's been very, very eye-opening in the past year. I mean, I'm the type of guy that was, I am a believer, but you're still kind of on the fence. You're like, well, it's got to be, but I haven't shook hands with one, so, and there's all these questions, the same questions I get now, why is there not a body? Why is just stuff that there's answers for, but you don't readily have an answer for it. I was that guy. And then last year, the first time I went, kind of, did change my life, and I don't talk about it. It is very private, and I don't, because I'm not intelligent enough about it. I haven't read every book, and I haven't really did my research. I only have my experiences, And I've been very lucky enough to have enough experiences to kind of create my own little, say, infrasound. I love this. I've had enough experiences to be able to stop and think when it's happening and take note. How do I quantify this? How do I quantify this feeling? Or how those guys are being affected? Well, maybe the wave of silence that comes and the wave of silence that goes away, when the forest comes back to life. I mean, there's things that can help you believe that, no, that wasn't fear. That was actually something, something that happened. But I don't want to go on and on about this. Yeah, we've pretty much anything you can think of, that goes along with when these creatures are around. And then there again, I don't really talk about a lot of stuff, but yeah, no, there's been experiences there. I'm not now on the fence anymore. It's more of a why and how, and why am I, after having this love of this, why am I here? Why do I get this privilege? And what can I do? What can I do to, because I don't talk publicly about it, what can I do to help these people? Because I fight this battle, because I'm from Central Illinois. You don't talk about this. Although people have searched for me and came to me and called me and said, hey, I'm from your area, this happened, or my grandpa has this story. I tell them, hey, we make toys. I don't really know, but you step back and you're like, I know more than this person, and all he's asking me is, hey, am I nuts? I can't give him that answer, but I can say, yeah, that's happened. I've experienced that. There's something there. I don't know what it is. I can't fully explain it, but your grandpa, my grandpa was a coon hunter. There's a wealth of stories there, but I don't, and I wish he hadn't passed away, because my mom is telling me these stories of things he had experienced. I'm like, why did nobody ever tell me this when I was younger? It's like, well, duh. You can't tell your kids. I have a 10-year-old. He doesn't know what I do. He's not listening. He's not on Facebook. Yeah. I can't go home and say, that's what I did this weekend, or what I think happened. You don't do that. But I guess you answered. The question was, I'm very privileged to be able to go with these gentlemen and experience stuff. I kind of sit back and just watch, and they do their thing, and I've got to experience many, many different aspects of this whole phenomenon, and it's wonderful. I don't go talk about it at the conferences. We sit there, but it does kind of irk me a little bit when people say, well, you don't do nothing but sell toys. No, my love for this, our love for this manifests itself into this product, which is the very best, most professional representation that we can put forth. This is backed up by, Gene didn't tell you, but he does the research involved and which Native American folklore, what is going to be our standard Sasquatch. He is the berry picking, I would probably run away from you before you know I was there face. And that was on purpose, because that's the representation that I want to be, because I fully believe that you can't, if these things wanted to come out and harm you, and I'm not saying that doesn't happen, I would have witnessed it. As torqued off as they can be, they want you out of that area now. They're screaming. They're banging rocks. They're throwing rocks. They're throwing mud. They want you to get out of there. They haven't done anything mean. And it took me a while to go from, we got to get out there and provoke and try to make this happen, to let's not be as provoking. Let's just kind of be here and see what happens. And like I said, I get more and more, I get questions. I'll shut up now. I'm sorry.
No, that's when we have people on Monster X, we always invite them on because the customers, because our listeners want to hear our guests. They don't really care too much about hearing from Shane and I anymore. But I like, it's interesting because you obviously have had some encounters of some kind that you can't explain by known animals, so and it shifted you from being on the fence to feeling like this is a actual entity that lives in the woods. So, and it's also interesting one of the things that you talk about, because you over a beer, we went out and had beers and at the Ohio Bigfoot conference, and you shared stories there. So some people are more comfortable being really public with their stories, and other people are not, and it's just like you're talking about certain areas of the country. Here in Oregon, I find people are really receptive to talking about it. They're interested in the topic of Bigfoot, and you're saying, that's not the case in Indiana. Did you say Indiana or Illinois? One of those high states. Illinois, excuse me. So, and I actually had a person who contacted me a while back about down by one of the airports seeing a Bigfoot, and that was kind of central Illinois, that they said they saw Bigfoot at the perimeter of this airport. And it was, when I looked on the maps and stuff, it sounded feasible to me. So it's interesting always dealing, with talking to lots of eyewitnesses, or when people know that obviously if people know what that you make these replicas, and are looking for how many people that have had an encounter are looking for somebody to tell that to. It's fascinating, because it is kind of providing a service to folks that have had an encounter, and you say, am I crazy? And that's one of the questions. They don't want to go out and tell people, because they don't want to be thought of as crazy or a liar or all these negative connotations that come with saying, hey, I saw this, something that most people don't give much thought to, and if they do, they think it was found in a freezer in Georgia. So so it is it's interesting. I mean, it's the topic itself, and obviously you've had some pretty profound stuff happen that
it does, Gunner. I don't want to be the guy that I don't want to be the guy that says I've did this 17 times. This is I'm so not that. I've just been lucky enough to be under several different circumstances during current happenings
and if you go out into an area, I mean, if I've heard that a lot too, of people giving people a hard time because they've had multiple things that have happened that either they've had multiple sightings, they have, and I'm of the opinion that we're dealing with an animal that's transitory, not migratory. So they may have a pretty good range that they go, but I don't think they go from Alaska down to California. I don't think that they give a range. So I think if you have an area that they're in, and you're there at the right time, and you can study their patterns enough, that you can. It's all about shrinking down. I always say, it's a needle in the haystack with a moving needle. So if you can kind of predict where shrink the haystack down to where you think they might be, you're increasing your chances. We've had a couple of sighting encounters in our research area. Unfortunately, both times that this happened, well, may have been a third possible time, but 2 times for sure our member wasn't actually Bigfooting. They were doing something else and weren't prepared because I would love to get video of these 2 encounters, but we weren't. They weren't ready at the time. They were doing something else, and driving down the road, you don't necessarily think, hey, Bigfoot's going to walk out the road. And although there's a lot of, a high number of Bigfoot encounters or reports are road crossings, which kind of makes sense. Yeah. So let's bring Gene back on here. Gene, when you're doing these replicas, are any of those based on eyewitness encounters, or this is a kind of a conglomerate of images that you pull together?
It's kind of a mixture. I've talked to a number of witnesses myself, and so that's kind of thrown in the stew. And then it's also a mixture of that, and then a certain amount of witness encounters I've read about through, like obviously John Green's books and things like that. And then some other things to just kind of give it a little more pop, because we are kind of selling an idealized version. But it's, to go with maybe one specific encounter, it's kind of hard because there isn't a lot of consistency. One of the issues I have with modern reports is that it's theoretically so easy to just go on the internet and cobble together a cool sounding Bigfoot story. Because you could say, well, I heard the scream and then there was rocks thrown at me. And so I like to go back to earlier reports, the classic reports like the William Rowe and stuff like that, and the Teddy Roosevelt story about the trappers and things like that.
Right.
But where I can, I mix in, witness descriptions. And then, of course, when we go to conventions or I talk to people online, there's invariably always that guy that's like, well, what you did doesn't look at all like the one I saw. And so just, I just very, just very matter of factly say, oh, that's cool. I'd love to see your photos. And then immediately the guy just clams up, well, or they send me like this picture of a stump or something like that, the typical thing. And it's just, so
I've learned
my issue with a lot of it is like, I think most of a lot of the stories and stuff, I think tend to be trumped up. A lot of people just looking for attention. But then I hear guys like Jeff who tells me all this stuff. And just the stuff he's talking about tonight, he's never even told me before, a lot of it. So when it becomes an issue for me when someone that I know and respect and trust talks about stuff like that, then it's like, okay, as far as I know, he's not, a gibbering lunatic. And I don't think he's full of crap. So he's got to really be experiencing this stuff. Whereas, people you don't know what their issue is, I like to give people the benefit of doubt. I like to assume that someone, if they tell me something, they're not lying. But, to go the next step and say, okay, how do you back this up? If you saw this, have you also experienced related phenomena in the area? Sounds. Did you catch anything on tape? Did you get any casts? Did you get any photos of trackways? Things that are kind of corroborative evidence. But when somebody like Jeff tells me a story like that, it's like, it's not like I'm not looking for reasons not to believe. I'm looking for reasons to support the fact that I'm already halfway there. So when I hear from somebody like him, then it gives me hope that, there will maybe be something definitive in the coming years, because I'm in the camp that I don't think it'll ever be proved without a body. I don't think anybody's going to get a photograph that's going to do anything. And to kind of casually speculate about whether they're human or some sort of a quasi-ape hybrid is pointless, because you can't tell that without a biological dissection and without DNA and things like that. And I think if these are a creature that are so hard to catch sight of, that their population numbers probably are in danger. So conceivably, if they're not proven to exist in the next, say 25 years, they could be extinct in the next 50 years or less. Because I don't tend to believe that they're all across the United States. It's a fun thing to think that they could be hanging out, in the woods behind my house. But I just don't think that the evidence supports it. And that of course comes back to the skeptical viewpoint. I mean, I don't consider myself a skeptic in the modern sense, where they just poo-poo everything that doesn't fit into their little myopic worldview. Mm-hmm. But I think you have to look at all this stuff with a certain amount of discernment and decide how much evidence is there for this. Unless, of course, if you've had that come to Jesus moment like some of the things Jeff's talking about, if I had experiences like that, a certain amount of that stuff, and you're starting to put an awful lot of checks in the, pro Bigfoot column. So
exactly, yeah.
But
and I refer to that as the confirmation experience. But that's a sighting to me. I've heard a lot of weird stuff and had some weird activity. I think I had a rock thrown in our direction. We had some weird sounds. We felt like we were being escorted out of the woods, but I didn't see Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've had, weird screams, and when we are always recording audio stuff, so and we take a look at it in like sonic visualizer, so we can tell whether or not it falls in the range of a known animal or not. Mm-hmm. And we have stuff that fall into, because you don't have a database of seeing Bigfoot making audio, that you can't say this. Here we have Bigfoot audio. We don't have a type specimen, just like we don't have I agree with you that it's either going to take a specimen alive or dead, or some kind of, it would have to be a long-term study by like Jane Goodall thing with pieces of evidence, multiple corroborated evidence like DNA and clear pictures and video and
mm-hmm.
And more than which, if that all was easy to do, we wouldn't be talking about are they? We'd know what they were. And I don't know if you guys heard the show last week with Dr. Disatel, but he's talking about there's this new DNA technology about that they can basically take dirt and sift the DNA out of it basically and sort what animals are in that dirt. And that holds some real possibility for, if that you got an area that Bigfoot frequents, then maybe you could, again, it's not going to, you don't have a type specimen, but over time, if you got, you're picking up dirt from different wooded areas and you get this DNA signature over and over again, you might not know what it is, but you have, that there's some animal out there that's unknown that's a primate or whatever that it comes back as. So that, to me, is pretty exciting, of the possibility of course, the challenge is always financial, and because it's not a cheap process to do this new DNA technology. So, but it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's all of it is a lot of things that are going on now with a lot of the groups trying to take a definitive step towards being more scientific in their own way. Mm-hmm. That's the right direction to go as far as proving this. I mean, of course, a lot of people have the attitude that why should you have to prove them, leave them alone, and all that. But I think the bigger problem is that other than in the really remote areas, like in the Olympic Peninsula and things like that, or the depths of Canada, they're not going to be bothered there. But if these things really are so spread out that their range is as broad or anywhere near as broad as people seem to suggest by their sightings, then there's a lot of populations of them that will be in danger. I live in New Jersey, and we have an overabundance of black bears. So much so that a few years ago they started a legal bear hunt where you could take a certain number of them a year because there's just too friggin' many. And even though the black bears tend to be fairly non-aggressive, when they get too close to human populations and things, they become a nuisance and become dangerous. We've had a couple instances here where a couple of hikers got eaten because they just happened to catch them on a day when maybe they just weren't finding enough food to forage, But, but I mean, in an instance like that, you compare bears like some of the talks that I've heard Meldrum give. He talks about theoretically the black bear maybe would have sort of a crossover in terms of feeding style with something like a Sasquatch. Like they'd both be omnivorous animals.
Mm-hmm.
And And if that's the case, then like in a place like where I live, if there was a competitive population, there's a lot of freaking bears, thousands of bears. Obviously, we're not, and I see them march through my yard all the time with, babies in tow. I'm not seeing Sasquatches march through my yard with families in tow. But you're talking about probably a much smarter animal that would have to be if you're not seeing that many of them. But, I've read, I can't remember where I read it, whose book it was in, but I read about during one of those African countries where they always seem to be in some sort of genocidal war. The chimps had actually, this one population of chimps, a tribe of them, had taken to traveling only at night so that they would avoid the soldiers during the day. So they became nocturnal by choice. They learned that it was too dangerous during the day, so they did all their foraging and stuff at night. So even an animal that's not, I tend not to think that these things are as smart as people, but, again, who knows? We don't have any data to base that on other than eyewitness data, which is not all that valuable scientifically. But, you figure if chimps can learn to just kind of avoid people with that level of logic, then certainly something like this that may be smarter than chimps, why not?
Right. And that's always the one of the talking points is what are we, we're talking about something that's probably the smartest animal in the woods. And before debating whether or not they're animal or a tribe of people or whatever. But I'm coming from the perspective that we're dealing with an animal, and they are, they are smart enough to, for the most part, avoid us and seem to know where we're at. You figure if there any animal that comes in to check us out knows how they're getting out of there generally when they come in. So you're talking about an animal that is probably smarter than a deer or a chipmunk or, so I'm sure that they know. It's just like the debate about trail cams. Because not necessarily they know what a trail cam is or that it, what it does. It's just that it's a weird thing on on a tree that they and they probably can smell it or hear the gears in it. So I don't think they avoid it for any supernatural reason. I think that or that they can intellectualize what it does, because if that was the case, they'd avoid audio recorders, and we have cases where something has come up to an audio recorder and make ape-like sounds. So I don't think they know what a camera is. I just think they tend to avoid something stuck to a side of a tree that they don't think belongs there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you have to eliminate the obvious things first. The things that we already know are inherent in the environment. You have to know whether. And here's a good example that I always pull up when I'm talking about this stuff. My house backs right up onto the woods, but there's maybe 100 yards across, and then there's another development out behind me. But in between where the row of houses is I live by and the ones behind us, there's a ravine that's probably, maybe it's 50 yards across. And at the bottom of the ravine, it goes down about 75 feet in the stream. Now, animals can go through this ravine behind all the houses on either side, and unless you're looking over the little cliff, you don't see them. And that's the way the bears kind of travel around and stuff, and deer and everything else. And in the one night, like around 10 or 11 o'clock at night in the summer, had all the windows open, and I'm walking through my studio, and I hear this sound that sounded kind of like a gorilla sound, like that kind of like a pant hoot kind of thing, that weird kind of breathing and the monkey kind of sound. And I'd never heard anything like that around here. I mean, we have an owl that takes up residence in the tree out in front of the house, during most of the summer. All sorts of weird stuff going on in the trees with like raccoons fighting and squirrels. The creepiest sound and stuff you ever heard. But I know what it is because I researched it. And then, cats fighting in the woods. You name it, we got it. And then I heard this sound, and just it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was the creepiest thing I've ever heard. And so I asked around a few of my friends, and come to find out, my friend who lives like a couple of miles away, she would have a mama bear with her 2 cubs who'd come into the yard every night. She would send the 2 babies up the tree next to her house, and then the mother would go around down the street, and this would be on garbage night every week. She'd knock over all the garbage cans and get food for her and the babies. Then she'd come back and she'd make this weird sound, and the babies would come scurrying down the tree, and then they'd all split. And
she was ringing the dinner bell.
Yeah. So what sounded to me like some creepy kind of primate sound was just another type of bear call that, I wasn't familiar with, which doesn't mean anything. I'm no woodsman. But, another thing that I've heard, you hear a lot in the literature, the talk of like the sound of like a woman screaming kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
In parts of New York State, there's fisher cats. And I had heard the name before, but I didn't know what they were. So my friends moved upstate New York, and she said that these animals just started coming back into their territory. And she said they freaked them out at first because they sound like somebody being stabbed to death. So I went online and I listened to it, and it's like, that could be one of the sounds that people are attributing to this animal, because it sounds like a woman being stabbed to death. So you have to eliminate those things. Just like, if they always talk about how you have to know your tracks, so that when you're looking at, the forepaw print of a mountain lion or something, or the back footprint of a bear, that you're not assuming that that's something else. You've got to eliminate the natural world before you start getting into the cryptic world, and that's, as I've talked to people in the community who are like, because obviously I believe in the possibility, but, I don't believe every single thing I hear. And I talked to one person once who was telling me that they don't like to read books on the subject. They like to experience the creatures in their own habitat. So just to play devil's advocate, I said, so you must have had a lot of cool firsthand experiences. And she was like, oh, no, but I saw a track once. So she sent me a photo of a muddy hole in the ground.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that's really cool. So that's right there. I mean, what the hell? I mean, if people enjoy doing it and have fun, if they want to go out in the woods and play Dungeons and Dragons and make them believe everything's Sasquatch, good for them. But that type of mentality doesn't further the cause of proving its existence or whatever your motivation may be, whether it's that or whether it's just getting a firsthand experience. But everybody's got their own motivations for being out there doing it, I guess.
Exactly, and that's true. Not everybody is out there trying to confirm their existence. Well, we're getting pretty close to being out of time. Jeff, are you still there?
I am here.
Okay.
Just enjoying the conversation.
Yes. So I did want to take this opportunity to thank both of you gentlemen for joining us here today on Monster X. Where folks are going to be looking for Creatureplica, where can they get their own, say, exclusive skookum that is running out shortly, or your other replicas?
Well, the best place to get our products is on our website on creaturereplica.com. Some different retailers occasionally carry them, but you can ask your local comic stores to see if they want to order them through Diamond Previews. But generally speaking, the most direct way to get them is through us. And we periodically run specials on shipping and things like that. So if they keep their eyes peeled on the site, then you might be able to get a set of figures with reduced shipping if you time it right, you know. So that's the best place to look.
All right, creaturereplica.com. Jeff and Gene, I want to thank you again for joining us today on Monster X. I hear you guys are going to be at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
One or both of you?
That's right.
All right, so you can also, if you're headed to the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, be sure and check out Creature Replica. I hope to see you guys this year at the International Bigfoot Conference. I'll be up there. Thanks everybody for listening this week. Joining us next weekend is Mother's Day weekend. We'll have a show for you. If it may be pre-recorded, but anyway, we will catch you next week with a brand new Monster X Radio. Thanks guys for joining me. Have a great week. Squatch out.
Thanks Gunner.
Man.
Bet.
Okay, Mr. Orchard Supply Hardware. Does Orchard have brands?
Of course.
Do you have Benjamin Moore?
Yes.
Craftsman? Weber?
Yep.
Kohler?
Absolutely.
Okay, how about Spiny Beetle?
Spiny beetle?
It's plumber's putty from Tasmania
No, sorry.
that I totally made up.
Orchard Supply Hardware has the brands you and your home need. Come see at the happiest grand opening ever, May 20th and 21st at our new Belmont store. Orchard, home, hardware, and happiness.
Okay, Mr. Orchard Supply Hardware. Does Orchard have brands?
Of course.
Do you have Benjamin Moore?
Yes.
Craftsman? Weber?
Yep.
Kohler?
Absolutely.
Okay, how about Spiny Beetle?
Spiny beetle?
It's plumber's putty from Tasmania
No, sorry.
that I totally made up.
Orchard Supply Hardware has the brands you and your home need. Come see at the happiest grand opening ever, May 20th and 21st at our new Belmont store. Orchard, home, hardware, and happiness.